I have a question related to Tracify. How the ledger is distributed in Tracify? Is it on the user side or the distributor side, or how is it distributed? The ledger
distributed what? I didn't get the question right. The
ledger
is
how is it distributed?
yeah. Now we are using a public blockchain, right? When you use a public blockchain, you already have the infrastructure provided by that public blockchain. So if we take Stellar, it already has that infrastructure. It already has the full nodes which do this consensus and everything. That infrastructure. So when we use Stellar, we can either opt in to just use the API, so that we will be sending our transactions, pushing our transactions to Stellar when inputting data, and then query them back when we need them, when someone wants to go through this data. Right? Or else we can go another step further and have our full Stellar node running, which can process things much faster and deliver us results faster, but with a cost, of course. Right? It's pretty much the same if we switch to Ethereum as well, right? You can either rely on an API provided by the blockchain, or you yourself can run a full node. Did I answer your question, or is it still obscure?
So, just to understand, like when you're saying you're calling an API, probably if you're not running a full node, so the full node would be somewhere remote, right?
What happens is the Stellar itself, Stellar organization itself, is running couple of full nodes. So they are using one of their full nodes to expose this API. So when you use the
itself is sort of an API, right? Does not open a public API, but it's sort of a proxy which opens an API.
Exactly. But it relies on one particular node, which has to be in sync with the rest.
This is regarding the supply chain. Say if the packet is says that there is a barcode or something, we can trace the history of the supply. But what happens if the inside is changed, or someone puts something inside the packet, but the packet says some genuine things, but inside is changed by at any stage of the supply chain? What?
You mean the item is physically changed?
It's physically changed.
Yeah. We have to understand that blockchain doesn't know anything about what is happening in the physical world. So even if you don't have to really change what is inside, but even if you change the identifier, if you remove the code and paste your own code, it will give erroneous information. But for that, again, there are few proofs. You can, the supply chain can provide a good sort of a packaging, very secure packaging, which is approved by another professional body or something. Let's say this packaging cannot be broken, cannot be tampered with without breaking the seal or something, right? And then that comes to a matter of trust linking, the second aspect that I talked about. Of course, you can rely on a proof on this, but with trust linking, people, the consumer, when he has the product on his hand, he can see who are the people endorsing the the reliability of the packaging in this. And if the endorsing is good enough, he is confident, he will go ahead with buying. So you can't provide a direct guarantee on these kind of things, but you can link to places where, like places or the bodies that can provide you expert opinions on these physical world tampering scenarios, which will help the end consumer. So it's a sort of an indirect proof.
So actually, for the tea industry, the tea supply chain. So can you hear now? Okay. Do you actually practically, if we are going to implement this kind of thing for tea supply chain, so packaging, you mean that you said we have to consider or hire the packaging expert or for the proof these things?
Sorry, I didn't get.
You mean
Can you repeat the last part?
You mean the for the packet? So we need some sort of a third party support from the third party to ensure the packet is not opened before the end user.
Yeah. Yes, of course. What we do there is, have you heard of Web of Trust? Web of Trust is a huge, again, like internet, like a network where people rate each other's trustworthiness of each other's key pair, private public key pair, right? So we are now linking this Web of Trust to the bodies that provide certifications and guarantees on technologies involved. Packaging is one thing, right? Packaging is one thing. Definitely what we have to understand is these are physical world scenarios, and then rather than just blindly relying on the blockchain, we will have to integrate the expert bodies, the experts or the trustworthy organizations that would provide you some sort of certification on the technologies that are being used here. Right? So now it resolves into a matter of how reliably a blockchain can tell you which certifying bodies have actually certified this. But in today's case, any fraudulent business can claim that in their packaging, they can claim that, okay, these organizations are certifying this, which is complete lies. But with the blockchain, and that's where the blockchain comes, the blockchain can assure that, okay, this guy, this organization with this public key has certified this, has endorsed this packaging technology. There are, in dairy, there are scenarios like that. You have you produce milk in a very authentic way. You feed the right thing to the cattle and everything, do everything. But once you collect that from the collection point to the factory, there's a transport stage, right? During the transport, what our guys do is, in our field visits, we have identified what our guys do is, they first visit some place and half of the genuine milk goes to somewhere, is sold somewhere, and then they mix either some other milk or just water. Right? So now the problem is, how can the blockchain tackle this scenario? Right? Directly it can't. Definitely it can't, because blockchain is just a digital mechanism. But now what they have done is, the companies have done is, they use a lock. They use a lock on the tank, which can only be opened at the processing facility. But now again, it comes to a matter of the reliability of the lock-in technology, whether it can be broken, right? And then it can be linked at least to two bodies. One thing is, one body is the company that produces the lock, how trustworthy they are. So the Web of Trust will tell you what is the rank, trustworthiness ranking of the company that produces the lock. And there can be other like verification, certification bodies that guarantee that, okay, this lock is a high quality one, and so on. Right? So the blockchain will tell you how reliable the lock is, but not exactly whether the lock is broken or not, because the blockchain can't, of course, figure out that.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, I have a couple of questions. The first one is, when it comes to blockchain development, as far as I know that, the gas price, especially working in Ethereum kind of a blockchain, the gas price is a huge thing for the customer, the user, right? Usually the gas price is decided, as far as I know, based on the assembly type of code that are executed in the Ethereum virtual machine. So, is there any best practices or guidelines, to reduce the gas price? I mean, the way we write the code. Can you? I'm not sure whether you get my question or something.
Yeah, of course, there are best practices. If you go to the Ethereum documentation, you can find what issue. I mean, those boil down to best practices in general programming. I mean, it's a Turing complete language, and most of the languages we using today are Turing complete. So any best practices for best processing, like minimum execution overheads, would lead into better code. But at the same time, there are other considerations like if you are setting a value, there's a cost for you, gas price for you. But if you are resetting it to null, then again there's, I think, even a give back, ether give back if you are resetting. So there are a set of best practices that you can follow. But I think the gas price problem really arises when you not because if you have written a bad code, of course it will have high gas price. But the real problem would be if there's a high demand of transaction, then automatically your transaction cost gonna go up, irrespective of whether your code is whether your code is optimized or not. So that is something you cannot really control. Like depending on the environment, the transaction cost would be higher. But going back to your original question, yes, and there are even services which tells you how much gas it consumes. I mean, even the Web3 API itself provides and give you a notion of how expensive your transaction is. So that's something you have to do with your code definitely before you deploying it to mainnet especially.
And also, especially when it comes to Ethereum, there are lots of applications built on top of Ethereum. So, which actually just make the number of blocks. I mean, which cost the huge amount of the gas price. For example, things like CryptoKitties, which just populated the blockchain with lots of, which made the blockchain create lots of blocks. So, is it advisable to create apps in Ethereum still, or is it good to switch to something else like Stellar or something else?
Well, this is my personal opinion on this. I think this has been recognized. Like the gas price is too expensive for most of the things that people want to do on Ethereum. I mean, the gas price is too high. But they are actively working on it. I mean, the state channel or the Lightning version Lightning version of blockchain in Ethereum, the state channels, that is an active thing, and it's quite actively they are working on it, and they are trying to bring those solutions. So the cost would go down, would be fraction of what the price that we are paying. My take on that is if you really go and check what's really happening on Ethereum, other than the ICOs, there are very few applications. The CryptoKitties is the only application that you can think of. Like there could be a couple of, but mainly it's CryptoKitties other than ICOs. So what Ethereum provides is the full infrastructure for you to work on. The documentation, the supporting community, the language, all the supporting tools, libraries. So everything is there. So I think there's a lot more for anyone to get experience with Ethereum, right now. If you think that, okay, the gas price is too high, I would switch to a different network and I want to learn the technology from a different network, I think it'll take longer time. Or you will have more difficulties trying to learn things from another network. So because of that, my opinion on this is don't worry about the gas price right now. Just go ahead and experience the blockchain. I mean, develop it, get the experience, understand the fundamentals, and read as much as you can and be up to date with what's happening around Ethereum. So right now, that is what you should be worried about. The gas price thing is a identified problem, definitely an identified problem. So that will be solved. But if you are up to speed by that time with the technology, and if you have good experience on building things, I think that's how I'm looking at it. If I'm doing an application, I would not worry about the gas price at all at this point.
If it is okay, I can ask another question. Okay. The next question is on Tresified. Actually, the question I have is, in Tresified, do you have different coins for different products? Like you mentioned, horse coin, and what's that? Beef coin, and so I think Tresified. I just went through your website and see. I mean, you have some solutions for the fish market and the fish industry, and so do you have different types of coins for different types of industries or different type of customers?
Different types of models, you mean, right?
I'm asking about different types of tokens, maybe the digital assets.
Type of? Different types of?
Digital assets,
assets.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah. Even within the same case, we have to have a lot of different assets. In the case I have presented, we have to have a milk asset, and a sugar asset, apple asset, and a yogurt. They are completely independent, and then it's the registrar who has to build the relationship between all of them. This much of milk mixed with this much of sugar should not result in more than this amount of yogurt, and that kind of smart contracts has to be written by the registrar. The relationships between assets.
For the penalty, do you have another token or something? For example, let's say somebody have proven that they have cheated, so they have to pay the penalty, right? For that, do you have a different token for that?
Yeah. So that is again something we can discuss maybe like in a future session. We are building a cryptocurrency model right now, but we have not yet released our own token, the Trace coin. Right? But at some point we will most probably, and then it will be the one which is driving this economy, as you said, for the rewards and penalties. And
in Ethereum, we have different standards like ERC20 and ERC721 for different things. How can we say? For the digital assets, usually people use ERC721 or some standards. In Stellar also, is there any such standards to follow for different type of tokens?
Yeah. Would you like to answer that?
Actually, in Stellar you don't. But you can kind of map it with a certain asset. You can pretty much define any type of assets. And there is a party that will kind of have the highest authority or control of that asset. But you don't really have this like say CR20 or 720 kind of a token concept. So what we are looking at is something like a token, so like this Tracify, the Trace coin. But again, we need to figure out like it's really going to be a token like Ethereum token or something else.
In Stellar is mainly made for the banks. With banks, like, what you see is a trusted entity and a bunch of customers around it. So then in Stellar you can, as Dilum said, you can freely create any sort of an asset. That's pretty simple. And that's why it is very friendly for ICOs as well. If you are creating your token, it's very easy to do it in Stellar than in most of other blockchains. But then mapping that digital token to a real world entity is totally up to the business case, and that is typically managed by what in Taylor terms is called anchors. An anchor usually stands for a bank, because if you say a bank, you can create, for instance, Sri Lankan rupee token in Taylor, but that will not have any meaning until you get the support of a Sri Lankan bank as the anchor, because then the anchor will define what LKR is. It is actually Sri Lankan rupee. Right? So for that mapping, you have to have some trusted entity. So it is somewhat different from the other public blockchains.
Okay, yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Any more questions?
Can you give us some your idea about the Coda? Coda, is it a blockchain framework or?
Can you speak a bit loud? I didn't get the question.
Do you recommend to use Coda for the blockchain developments?
No, we are not. What is it?
Coda is.
Yeah. What is it?
Is it?
Do you
Is
have
it?
any experience with?
Yes, I had to study about the blockchain. That one also. It's this. They also says they are a blockchain framework. They develop same as the other blockchain technologies. So haven't you heard about that?
Is it a blockchain or a blockchain tool? Or what kind of a technology?
They are mainly for distributed ledgers, but now this says, they develop. It's a private. They said they develop.
Company.
No, it's the company is R3, and their product is called Coda.
Okay.
So it's permissioned. They said according to their website, it's permission blockchain, not a public one.
Yeah, we have not come across it. But do you have any sort of
Actually,
interest
in Microsoft website, they have a blockchain as service product. So they support one for Ethereum and Hyperledger, and third one is the Coda.
Okay, so it's a service, right? It's a blockchain-based service, isn't it?
No, that is from Microsoft. Microsoft provides a blockchain service, but for that service, we can use only those three.
Yeah. Coda is an open source blockchain platform, but unfortunately, we have not come across it. Yeah. We should take that separately. We have not come across that.
Okay.
There are a lot of blockchains out there anyway. Not dozens, but hundreds.
Okay. Thank you.
Actually, we have a use case to have kind of in a multi-tenant environment. We have to use we have a use case to use multiple tokens for each tenant. In that case, what is your suggestion?
What is the application?
Let's say some kind of a sign-in loyalty points.
Okay. Multiple tokens for I mean, one token per each tenant.
Yes.
Right? That won't be a bad idea as far as the token management semantics depends on the tenant. I mean, depends heavily on the tenant. Like, if you can't generalize it, and if you can't generalize, if the token management is significantly more complex to manage from one customer to another, it might not be a bad idea to have a token per each customer. Maybe you use a generalized one token as the underlying token and have exchange rate, and then for some special tenants, probably you can use another token with richer smart contracts. I don't think it's a bad idea.
So in that case, what is the blockchain you are suggesting that if we should go with Ethereum or some kind of another blockchain?
Yeah, it's very difficult to suggest a blockchain without having a good understanding about the business problem, right?
Yes.
But multiple asset management is definitely very easily possible with Stellar and with Ethereum as well, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, it allows you to create any number of tokens. So
Yeah,
there
yeah.
are limitations as such,
Yeah.
but other aspects would like decide what would be the best blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions? If we do not have any more questions, we can wrap up the Q&A. Any last chance? Oh, yeah.
In the Tracify, you said there is an auditor. So there is auditor. So in some case, we have to trust that entity. So in mostly, we are trusting that entity in that it ensures it ensures and it gives the correct certifications and everything. So
Auditor or the registrar?
sorry, the registrar.
Registrar, yeah.
So in a case like that, so most of the time the people trust that is fine, as in the real world also we trust the authority in those things. So in those type of a case, is it necessary to go for a public blockchain? Why can't you go for a consensus blockchain within that whole supply chain, where you can get rid of all this transaction fee problem and this latency problem? You can get rid of most of those blockchain related problem when you're going for a consortium blockchain.
Yeah.
So if you're why don't you go for a consortium blockchain in those cases?
Yeah, we considered the consortium model initially, and we were almost certain that that is the model to go ahead with. But then again, we came across this crypto economic model thing, because with a consortium model, you almost can't issue a token, because a consensus model is not safe, doesn't create a safe enough environment to rely on economic value. So since we are like building on top of our blockchain a crypto economic model, which is going towards either a token or some sort of a reward penalty mechanism, we definitely have to switch into a public blockchain. There's no other way. But of course, if the requirement was not there, I think a consortium blockchain would have been a pretty good contender for the solution.
In this case, are there any particular reason for choosing Stellar over Ethereum?
We started actually with Ethereum. I described that during last session as well. And of course, Ethereum has the best community, right? It's the most vibrant blockchain. But the problem is the current fees. If you take the current fee per transaction, I think in rupees, it's 50 rupees. 50 to 100 rupees. Yeah. So imagine having to pay 50 rupees to enter, take a photograph of some vegetable and send it to the blockchain. It's infeasible, right? So that's why we moved away from Ethereum to Stellar, which is like by several degrees, by even more than 1,000 times more cheaper than Ethereum. But on the downside, Stellar is not as safe as Ethereum because Ethereum has the highest mining community. It's even larger than the Bitcoin mining community. But Stellar is pretty small compared to that. So the smaller the mining community is, the less safer your blockchain is also. But then we had this compromise. And on top of that, we had the scalability issue as well. Currently in Ethereum, I think what's the best speed per second? 20. Is 20 possible? 20 transactions per second possible?
Yes, I mean every block is speeded every 20 seconds. I don't think it can reach 20 transactions.
Yeah. Because recently I saw a tweet from Vitalik that they have achieved 15 per second, but which is sort of slow. So those are the two reasons that we switched away from Ethereum, but we have not given up on Ethereum. We are researching on the possibility of using Ethereum Lightning on Raiden, and if it proves to be more efficient than Stellar, because in Ethereum Ethereum is the richest blockchain for smart contracts, and Stellar is pretty weak in that aspect, because we find it really difficult to implement some of our logic in Stellar as smart contracts, and we have to make a lot of hacks. Those are the downsides. So for the moment we have settled with Stellar, but doesn't mean that that's going to be forever.
Some public blockchain.
Side chains.
Yeah, a side chain. Like if you do something like that, we don't have to depend on the pay that transaction fee, because we don't have to validate every transaction on top of the Ethereum or Stellar. Do you have any plans on that, or what are the addresses?
Yeah, that's what pretty much Lightning does, right? And yeah, the channels. And do you have any
context that's called state channels, and in Bitcoin they call it the Lightning networks.
Yeah. It's a state channel, export.
Yeah, that is one of the names. I think there could be other names as well, but state channel seems to be the popular one.
So another thing that we could do is you could actually run two chains. So for an example, you could run something like Stellar, because it's fast, as your primary chain that will interact with the application, and then get that to use something like Ethereum to store your data, but then there you are primarily looking at proof of existence only. So that's another approach. Or other things like something like Big Chain DB, again you can do the same thing, where you essentially have a relational database that runs pretty fast, have little bit of consensus properties, but then you actually rely on a public one to make it further secure. So even I think Tracified is looking at that sort of a model as well.
Yeah, and we are also up on time, so we'll call it wraps. But of course, we can continue with networking with some beer and food at the back of the room. So let's call it wraps and enjoy yourselves. And yep.
If any of you want to see like how the practical blockchain looks like in a user interface, these transactions, hashes, and things that I have talked in my presentation, Shamilan has some of them ready in his machine. So if any of you is interested in seeing this in a blockchain explorer and these transactions happening and everything, the proofs and everything, you can just talk to him during the networking session.
All right. Thank you, Chim. Thank you, Dilip and Dr. Dilum. Thank you very much. And thank you all of you for being here. And hope to see you all at the next Colombo Blockchain Developers Meetup. Have a good evening.